I found this journal 3 years ago, tucked inside a rusted metal box beneath the floorboards of an abandoned lighthouse on the northern coast of Scotland. The lighthouse had been decommissioned in 1923, and no one had set foot inside for decades. The pages were yellowed, fragile, some of them barely legible. But the words were still alive. What you are about to hear is the complete transcription of that journal. The diary of a man who spent 4 years alone on a rock in the middle of the sea, watching over a light that guided ships through the darkest nights. His name was Edward Ashworth. He was 32 years old when he arrived at the lighthouse. He never left. The first entry is dated September 14, 1891. I arrived at Morrow Point at 3:30 in the afternoon. The supply boat that brought me here was captained by a man named Gregor, a weathered soul with hands like leather and eyes that seemed to look through me rather than at me. He spoke very little during the journey, only warning me once that the winters here are long and the silence is longer. I did not fully understand what he meant at the time. I think I am beginning to understand now. The lighthouse itself is a magnificent structure, though I use that word with some hesitation. It rises nearly 90 feet from the rocks below, painted white with a single red band around its middle. The light at the top is a first-order Fresnel lens, capable of casting its beam nearly 20 miles out to sea. It is my responsibility now to keep that light burning. Every night without fail, from sunset to sunrise. The previous keeper, a man named Thomas Brennan, left no notes, no instructions, nothing but a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a Bible with several pages torn out. I found both items on the small desk in the living quarters. I have kept the Bible. I poured the whiskey into the sea. My living quarters are modest but sufficient. A single room serves as bedroom, study, and kitchen. There is a small iron stove for cooking and warmth, a narrow bed pushed against the stone wall, a writing desk by the only window, and a chair that creaks whenever I shift my weight. The window faces east, toward the open ocean. I watched the sun set behind me this evening, casting long shadows across the water, and I felt for the first time the true weight of my solitude. There is no other land visible from here. No trees, no hills, no signs of human life. Only the sea, stretching endlessly in every direction, and the sky above it, vast and indifferent. I climbed the spiral staircase to the lantern room just before dark, 112 steps. I counted them twice to be certain. The lens is a thing of beauty, I must admit. Hundreds of glass prisms arranged in perfect geometric patterns, all designed to capture the light of a single flame and magnify it into something that can pierce the thickest fog, the darkest night. I lit the lamp at exactly 6:47, just as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon. The flame caught immediately, and within moments, the lens began to rotate, sending its beam sweeping across the water in slow, steady circles. I stood there for nearly an hour, watching it turn, listening to the mechanical click of the clockwork mechanism that drives the rotation. It is a lonely sound, but a comforting one. As long as I can hear that clicking, I know the light is working. I know I am doing my job. I ate a simple meal of bread and salted fish before retiring to bed. The wind had picked up considerably by then, howling around the tower like a living thing, rattling the window panes in their frames. I pulled the thin blanket up to my chin and listened to the sounds of my new home. The wind, the waves crashing against the rocks far below, the distant rhythmic clicking of the lens mechanism above me, and beneath it all, a silence so profound it seemed to have weight, pressing down upon my chest like an invisible hand. I lay there for hours, eyes open in the darkness, watching shadows dance across the curved stone walls. Sleep, when it finally came, was shallow and restless, filled with half-formed dreams of endless water and spinning light. September 15th, 1891. I woke before dawn and climbed the stairs to extinguish the lamp. The morning was gray and cold, a thick mist hanging over the water like a shroud. I could not see more than 50 feet in any direction. The lighthouse itself seemed to float in a void, disconnected from the rest of the world. I spent the morning exploring my small domain, familiarizing myself with every corner, every crack, every rusted hinge and weathered stone. The lighthouse is built on a rocky outcrop approximately 200 feet in diameter. There is no beach, no gentle slope into the water. The rocks simply drop away into the sea, jagged and unforgiving. I found a small path that winds down to a natural ledge about 20 feet above the waterline. This is where the supply boat will anchor when it comes, once every 3 months. 3 months, 90 days of solitude before I see another human face. The thought should frighten me, I suppose, but I came here seeking solitude. I came here to escape the noise and chaos of the world I left behind. Perhaps I should be careful what I wish for. I discovered a small storage room on the ground floor that I had not noticed yesterday. It was hidden behind a heavy wooden door that had swollen shut from the moisture in the air. Inside, I found supplies left by previous keepers: coils of rope, spare wicks for the lamp, tools for maintaining the clockwork mechanism, and several crates of tinned food. There were also books, dozens of them, stacked haphazardly in the corner, their covers warped and spotted with mold. I carried them upstairs one by one and spread them out on my desk to dry. Most are technical manuals, guides to lighthouse maintenance and maritime navigation. But there are a few novels as well, and a collection of poetry that I do not recognize. I will have plenty of time to read them all. The fog did not lift all day. I kept the lamp burning even though it was daylight, knowing that ships might be passing nearby, invisible in the mist. I ate lunch standing at the window, watching the gray nothingness swirl and shift outside. Occasionally, I thought I saw shapes in the fog. Dark forms that seemed to move with purpose, only to dissolve into nothing when I looked directly at them. I know it is only my mind playing tricks on me. The human brain is not designed for this kind of isolation. It craves stimulation, connection, meaning. When it cannot find these things, it creates them. I must remember this in the months ahead. I must not let my imagination run wild. September 16th, 1891. The fog lifted sometime during the night, and I woke to a world transformed. The sky was a brilliant blue, unmarked by a single cloud, and the sea below sparkled like a field of scattered diamonds. I stood at the window for a long time, simply staring at the horizon, marveling at how different everything looked in the sunlight. The rocks that had seemed so menacing yesterday now appeared almost beautiful, their dark surfaces streaked with white where the waves had deposited salt over countless years. I even spotted a small colony of seabirds nesting on a ledge about halfway down the cliff. They are puffins, I think, though I am no expert in ornithology. Their presence comforts me somehow. I am not entirely alone here after all. I spent the afternoon performing maintenance on the lens mechanism. The clockwork that drives the rotation requires regular winding and occasional lubrication. It is delicate work requiring patience and precision. One wrong move could damage the gears, and without the rotation the light would be useless. A stationary beam might as well be a star, indistinguishable from the thousands of others that fill the night sky. It is the movement that catches the eye, the steady sweep that tells sailors where they are and warns them of the dangers that lie beneath the surface. I take my responsibility seriously. Lives depend on this light. I will not let them down. I found something strange while cleaning the lens today. Scratched into the brass frame, hidden beneath years of tarnish and grime, were two words: forgive me. The letters were small, barely visible, clearly carved with a knife or some other sharp instrument. I do not know who wrote them or why. Thomas Brennan, perhaps, the keeper who preceded me, or someone before him. This lighthouse has stood for nearly 40 years. How many men have lived and worked within these walls? How many have climbed these stairs, lit this lamp, watched this same horizon? And what did they need forgiveness for? I find myself thinking about those words more than I should. They haunt me in a way I cannot explain. September 18th, 1891. A ship passed by yesterday evening, close enough that I could see the figures moving on its deck. I waved to them from the gallery outside the lantern room, but I do not think they saw me. The ship was a merchant vessel, a three-masted bark riding low in the water, heavy with cargo. It was heading south, probably toward Liverpool or Bristol. I watched it until it disappeared over the horizon, and then I watched the empty space where it had been for a long time afterward. It is strange how much comfort I took from that brief sighting. For a few minutes I was connected to the wider world again. I was reminded that life continues beyond this rock, that people are going about their business, loving and fighting and dreaming, completely unaware of my existence. The thought should make me feel insignificant. Instead, it makes me feel free. I have established a routine now, and I find that routine is essential to maintaining my sanity. I wake each morning at 5:30, regardless of the season or the weather. I climb the stairs to extinguish the lamp and perform a brief inspection of the lens and mechanism. Then I descend to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, usually porridge with a little honey and a cup of strong tea. After breakfast, I spend 2 hours on maintenance tasks, whatever needs attention that day. The afternoon is reserved for reading, writing, and personal reflection. I eat a light lunch at noon and a more substantial dinner at 6. At sunset, I climb the stairs again to light the lamp, and I remain in the lantern room for at least an hour, watching the beams sweep across the water, listening to the click of the clockwork. Then I descend to my quarters, read for another hour or two, and retire to bed. It is a simple life, perhaps even a monotonous one. But there is peace in monotony. There is safety in repetition. September 21st, 1891. The first storm arrived today. I had seen it building on the horizon since yesterday afternoon, a dark mass of clouds that seemed to swallow the sky as it approached. By mid-morning, the wind had risen to a howl, and the waves were crashing against the rocks with tremendous force, sending spray nearly to the top of the tower. I secured everything that could be secured and retreated to the lantern room to watch the tempest unfold. It was terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. The sea had transformed into a churning chaos of white foam and black water, waves rising and falling like the breath of some enormous beast. Lightning flickered in the distance, followed seconds later by the deep rumble of thunder. And through it all, the light kept turning, cutting through the rain and spray, a beacon of hope in the midst of destruction. The storm lasted nearly 18 hours. I did not sleep at all, too afraid that something would go wrong with the mechanism, that the light would fail at the moment when it was needed most. But the lighthouse held firm. It has weathered worse storms than this, I am sure. These walls have stood against the fury of the North Atlantic for 4 decades. They will stand for 4 more. When the storm finally passed, sometime around 3 in the morning, I felt a strange sense of triumph. I had faced my first real test and emerged victorious. The light had not failed. I had not failed. September 23rd, 1891. I made a discovery today that has left me deeply unsettled. While cleaning out the storage room, I found a small wooden box hidden behind one of the crates of tinned food. It was locked, but the lock was old and rusted, and it broke easily when I applied pressure with a screwdriver. Inside, I found a collection of letters, perhaps 30 or 40 of them, all addressed to the same person, a woman named Eleanor Brennan. The return address on each envelope was this lighthouse. They were written by Thomas Brennan, the previous keeper. But here is what disturbs me. None of the letters had been sent. They were all still sealed, their stamps unused, their contents never read by their intended recipient. I opened one of them, I confess. I know I should not have, but my curiosity overwhelmed my sense of propriety. The letter was dated March 1889, more than 2 years ago. In it, Thomas wrote of his loneliness, his regret, his desperate longing to see his wife again. He begged her forgiveness for something he had done, though he did not specify what. He promised to return to her as soon as his contract was complete. He told her he loved her more than life itself. I do not know why he never sent these letters. Perhaps he was afraid of her response. Perhaps he could not bear to admit his failures to the woman he loved. Or perhaps something happened to him before he had the chance. I have placed the box back where I found it. I will not read any more of the letters. They are not meant for me. But I cannot stop thinking about Thomas Brennan, alone in this tower, writing letter after letter to a wife who never knew how much he missed her. What happened to him? Why did he leave? And what did he do that required such desperate pleas for forgiveness? September 25th, 1891. I saw something in the water today. I am not sure what it was, and I am hesitant to write about it for fear of sounding like a madman. But this journal is my only confidant, and I must be honest with it, even when honesty makes me uncomfortable. I was standing on the gallery outside the lantern room, watching the sunset, when I noticed a disturbance in the water about 100 yards from the base of the lighthouse. At first, I thought it was a seal or perhaps a large fish, but as I watched, the shape rose higher, and I realized it was too large to be any animal I knew. It was dark, almost black, and it moved with a slow, deliberate grace that suggested intelligence. For a moment, I could have sworn it was looking at me. Then it slipped beneath the surface and was gone. I told myself it was a whale. There are whales in these waters, I know. Minke whales, sometimes even humpbacks. What I saw could easily have been a whale surfacing to breathe. But something about the way it moved, the way it seemed to pause and regard me before disappearing, has lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. I dreamed about it last night. In my dream, the creature rose from the water and spoke to me, though I could not understand its words. Its voice was like the sound of waves breaking on rocks, deep and rhythmic and ancient. I woke with my heart pounding and could not fall asleep again until dawn. September 28, 1891. The days are growing shorter now, and the nights are growing cold. I have begun lighting the stove in the evenings, feeding it with the coal that was delivered with my supplies. I must be careful to ration it properly. If I run out before the next supply boat arrives, I will have no way to stay warm. The walls of the lighthouse are thick, but they are also stone, and stone holds the cold like a miser holds his gold. I have taken to wearing multiple layers of clothing, even indoors, and I sleep beneath every blanket I can find. I have been reading the poetry collection I found in the storage room. It is a volume by someone named William Blake, and his words are strange and beautiful and sometimes frightening. There is one poem in particular that I return to again and again. It speaks of a tiger burning bright in the forests of the night, and it asks what immortal hand or eye could frame such fearful symmetry. I think about that question as I watch the light sweep across the water each night. What hand framed this place? What I designed this lonely rock, this tower, this endless sea? And why did that hand place me here, alone, to bear witness to it all? October 2nd, 1891. I have not seen the creature in the water again, but I find myself watching for it constantly. Every time I climb to the lantern room, my eyes scan the surface of the sea, searching for that dark shape, that slow, deliberate movement. I know this is foolish. I know I am allowing my imagination to run away with me. But the memory of what I saw, or what I think I saw, will not leave me. It has become a kind of obsession, a puzzle I cannot solve. Perhaps that is the real danger of solitude. Not loneliness, but the way the mind latches onto mysteries and refuses to let them go. I received a letter today. The supply boat was not due for another 2 months, but a passing fishing vessel agreed to deliver it for a small fee. The letter was from my sister, Margaret, who lives in Edinburgh with her husband and 3 children. She writes that everyone is well, that the children are growing fast, that she misses me and prays for my safety every night. She asks when I will come home. She does not understand why I chose this life, why I would willingly exile myself to a rock in the middle of the sea. I am not sure I understand it myself anymore. I came here to escape something, but I can no longer remember what. The noise of the city, perhaps. The expectations of society. The weight of a life that never quite fit me. Out here, there are no expectations. There is only the light, the sea, and the endless rhythm of the days. October 5th, 1891. I have begun talking to myself. I noticed it yesterday when I caught myself narrating my actions aloud as I performed my morning maintenance. I was describing each step of the process as if I were teaching an invisible student. At first I was alarmed. Talking to oneself is often seen as a sign of madness, a symptom of a mind beginning to unravel. But the more I think about it, the more I believe it is simply a natural response to isolation. The human voice is meant to be used. It atrophies without practice, like a muscle that is never exercised. By speaking aloud, I am keeping that muscle strong. I am reminding myself that I am still capable of communication, even if there is no one to communicate with. I have also begun naming things. The puffins on the ledge below are now collectively known as the Parliament, because of the way they gather in groups and seem to debate amongst themselves. The largest wave that crashes against the rocks each day is called the Herald, because it always arrives first, announcing the others that follow. And the light itself, the great Fresnel lens that is my constant companion, I have named Beatrice, after the woman who guided Dante through paradise. It may seem foolish, but these names give me comfort. They transform my environment from a collection of objects into a community of sorts. I am not alone here. I am surrounded by friends, even if those friends are birds and waves and glass. October 10th, 1891. Something is wrong with the clockwork mechanism. I noticed it this morning when I climbed to the lantern room to extinguish the lamp. The rotation had slowed considerably overnight, and there was a grinding sound coming from somewhere deep within the gears. I spent the entire day disassembling the mechanism, searching for the source of the problem. It took me nearly 8 hours, but I finally found it. A small piece of metal, no larger than a coin, had become lodged between 2 of the main gears. I have no idea where it came from or how it got there. It almost looked like it had been placed deliberately, though that makes no sense. There is no one here but me. I removed the obstruction and reassembled the mechanism. It is working properly now, the rotation smooth and steady, the clicking regular and reassuring. But I cannot shake the feeling that something is not right. The metal piece I found was not part of the original mechanism. It was foreign, an intruder. How did it get there? I have examined every inch of the lantern room, searching for any gap or opening through which it might have entered. I found nothing. The room is sealed tight against the elements. Nothing gets in unless I bring it in myself. And I know I did not bring that piece of metal. I have never seen it before in my life. October 14th, 1891. The dreams have returned. Every night now, I dream of the creature in the water. It rises from the depths and circles the lighthouse, its dark form barely visible beneath the surface. Sometimes it speaks to me, though I still cannot understand its words. Other times it simply watches, its presence a weight I can feel even in sleep. I wake each morning exhausted, as if I have not rested at all. The line between sleeping and waking is beginning to blur. Yesterday I could have sworn I saw the creature while I was fully awake, a shadow passing beneath the waves as I stood on the gallery. But when I looked again, there was nothing there. I must get control of myself. I must not let these fantasies consume me. I am a rational man, a man of science and reason. I do not believe in sea monsters or supernatural phenomena. What I am experiencing is simply the result of isolation and stress. My mind is creating patterns where none exist, finding meaning in random events. It is a survival mechanism, nothing more. The human brain evolved to detect threats, to see predators lurking in every shadow. In the absence of real threats, it invents them. That is all this is, an invention, a fiction. I must remember that. October 18th, 1891. I found another message today. This one was not scratched into metal, but written on paper, tucked inside one of the books I had been reading. It was a slim volume on maritime navigation, dry and technical, the kind of book one reads out of necessity rather than pleasure. But between pages 112 and 113, someone had inserted a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was different from Thomas Brennan's letters. It was older, more formal. The letters carefully shaped in a style that has not been fashionable for decades. The message was brief. The light keeps them away. Never let it go out. I do not know who wrote this or when. I do not know what them refers to. But the warning has settled into my bones like the cold that seeps through these stone walls. I think of it every time I climb the stairs to light the lamp. I think of it every time I watch the beams sweep across the water. The light keeps them away. What happens if the light goes out? What comes then? I am being foolish. I know I am being foolish. This is exactly the kind of thinking I warned myself against. Someone, probably a previous keeper with too much time on his hands and too little company, wrote a cryptic note to amuse himself or frighten his successor. It means nothing. It is a joke, a prank, a bit of dark humor to break the monotony of lighthouse life. I should throw the paper away and forget about it, but I cannot bring myself to do it. Instead, I have placed it in my desk drawer, alongside Thomas Brennan's letters and the strange piece of metal I found in the clockwork. My collection of mysteries is growing. October 22nd, 1891. The weather has turned harsh. For the past 4 days, we have been battered by wind and rain, the kind of relentless assault that makes you feel as if the entire world has declared war on your small corner of it. I have not been able to go outside at all. The gallery is too dangerous. The wind strong enough to sweep a man off his feet and into the churning sea below. I spend my days in the lantern room, watching the storm through the thick glass windows, or huddled by the stove in my quarters, trying to stay warm. The coal is holding out, but I am beginning to worry. If this weather continues much longer, I may have to start rationing more strictly. The isolation feels different during a storm. When the weather is fair, I can at least see the horizon, can imagine the ships passing by, the distant shores where people live their ordinary lives. But in a storm, the world shrinks to the size of this tower. There is nothing beyond these walls but chaos and destruction. I am trapped in a bubble of calm at the center of a maelstrom, and the bubble feels very fragile indeed. I find myself checking the walls for cracks, listening for any sound that might indicate structural damage. The lighthouse has stood for 40 years, I remind myself. It will not fall tonight, but the fear remains, a constant companion whispering in my ear. October 25th, 1891. The storm finally broke this morning. I woke to silence, a silence so profound after days of howling wind that I thought for a moment I had gone deaf. I rushed to the window and saw a world transformed. The sea was calm, almost glassy, reflecting the pale gray sky like a mirror. The rocks below were strewn with debris, seaweed and driftwood, and the shattered remains of what might once have been a small boat. I climbed down to the ledge to investigate, my legs unsteady after so many days of confinement. The boat was beyond recognition, just fragments of wood and a few scraps of canvas that might have been a sail. I found no bodies, no personal effects, nothing to indicate who might have been aboard or where they were heading. Perhaps it was an old wreck, dislodged from the seafloor by the storm and washed up here by chance. Or perhaps it was a recent tragedy, a fishing vessel caught in the tempest, its crew lost to the merciless sea. I will never know. The ocean keeps its secrets well. I gathered what useful materials I could find and carried them back to the lighthouse. The wood will serve as kindling, and the canvas can be used for repairs. Nothing goes to waste out here. Every resource is precious, every scrap a potential lifeline. I said a brief prayer for whoever had sailed that boat, wherever they might be now. It seemed like the right thing to do. October 28th, 1891. I have been thinking about time. Out here it moves differently than it does on the mainland. There are no clocks in the lighthouse, no church bells to mark the hours, no schedules to keep except the ones I impose on myself. The only reliable markers of time are the rising and setting of the sun, the waxing and waning of the moon, the slow progression of the seasons. Days blur into one another, indistinguishable, interchangeable. I sometimes lose track of the date entirely and have to count backward from the last entry in this journal to figure out where I am. But there is another kind of time out here, a deeper time that has nothing to do with hours or days. It is the time of the rocks, which have stood unchanged for millions of years. The time of the sea, which has been rising and falling since before there were eyes to watch it. The time of the stars, which burn with a light that left them centuries ago. When I look up at the night sky, I am seeing the past. When I touch the stones of this lighthouse, I am touching something ancient, something that will endure long after I am gone. It is a humbling thought, but also a comforting one. My troubles, my fears, my loneliness, they are all so small in the face of this vast, indifferent universe. They will pass. Everything passes. Only the light remains. November 1st, 1891. A ship came close today, closer than any has come since I arrived. It was a steamship, modern and sleek, cutting through the water with an efficiency that the old sailing vessels could never match. I watched it approach from the gallery, my heart quickening with each passing minute. For a wild moment, I thought it might be coming for me. Perhaps there had been an emergency, a change of plans, a reason to bring me back to the mainland ahead of schedule. I waved my arms and shouted, though I knew they could not hear me over the sound of their engines. But the ship did not stop. It passed within a quarter-mile of the lighthouse, close enough that I could see the figures on deck, and then it continued on its way, heading north toward some destination I would never know. I watched it until it disappeared over the horizon, and then I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty sea. The disappointment was sharper than I expected. I had not realized how much I was hoping for contact, for connection, for some reminder that the world beyond this rock still existed. I am more alone than I thought. November 5th, 1891. I have started writing letters. Not to anyone in particular, just letters to the world, to the future, to whoever might find them after I am gone. I write about my days, my thoughts, my observations of the sea and sky. I write about the puffins and the waves and the light. I write about my fears and my hopes and my dreams. I seal each letter in an envelope and place it in the wooden box with Thomas Brennan's unsent correspondence. Perhaps someday, someone will find them. Perhaps they will read my words and know that I was here, that I existed, that I mattered. Or perhaps the box will rot away, and the letters will dissolve into dust, and no one will ever know I lived at all. Either way, the writing helps. It gives me purpose, a reason to pay attention, a way to make sense of the chaos inside my head. November 8th, 1891. The creature returned last night. I saw it clearly this time, illuminated by the beam of the lighthouse as it swept across the water. It was larger than I remembered, its body long and sinuous, moving through the waves with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. It circled the lighthouse 3 times, each pass bringing it closer to the rocks, and then it dove beneath the surface and was gone. I did not sleep at all after that. I sat in the lantern room until dawn, watching the water, waiting for it to return. It did not. I have decided to stop questioning what I see. Whether the creature is real or imagined, whether it is a whale or something else entirely, it does not matter. It is part of my world now, as real as the rocks and the sea and the light. I will observe it, document it, try to understand it, but I will not fear it. Fear is a luxury I cannot afford. Out here, fear is a predator, and I refuse to be its prey. November 12th, 1891. The supply boat should arrive in 6 weeks. I have been counting the days, marking them off in the margin of this journal like a prisoner counting down to his release. It is not that I am unhappy here. In many ways, I have found a peace I never knew on the mainland. But the human need for contact is strong, stronger than I anticipated. I long to hear another voice, to see another face, to shake another hand. I long to be reminded that I am not the last person on Earth, that somewhere out there, life continues in all its messy, beautiful complexity. I have been rationing my conversations with myself, trying to save my voice for when it is truly needed. But sometimes the silence becomes too much, and I find myself reciting poetry aloud, or singing half-remembered songs from my childhood, or simply talking to Beatrice as I polish her lenses and oil her gears. She is a good listener, Beatrice. She never interrupts, never judges, never offers unwanted advice. She simply turns, slow and steady, casting her light into the darkness. I could learn a lot from her. November 15th, 1891. I made a terrible mistake today. I was cleaning the lens, as I do every morning, when my hand slipped and I knocked one of the smaller prisms loose from its mounting. It fell to the floor and shattered into a dozen pieces, each one catching the light and throwing tiny rainbows across the walls. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the broken glass, my heart pounding in my chest. A damaged lens means a diminished light. A diminished light means ships in danger. Ships in danger means lives at risk. All because my hand slipped. I spent the rest of the day trying to repair the damage. The prism itself is beyond saving, but I was able to adjust the surrounding pieces to compensate for its absence. The beam is slightly weaker now, slightly less focused, but it still reaches the horizon. It will have to do until the supply boat arrives, and I can request a replacement. I have added the broken prism to my collection of mysteries, though this one is no mystery at all. It is simply a reminder of my own fallibility, my own capacity for error. I am the keeper of this light, and I nearly let it fail. I must be more careful. I must be better. November 18th, 1891. The nights are so long now. The sun sets before 4 in the afternoon and does not rise again until nearly 8 the next morning. That is 16 hours of darkness, 16 hours of watching the light turn, 16 hours of listening to the wind and the waves and the endless, maddening silence. I have taken to sleeping in shifts, a few hours in the evening and a few more before dawn, with long stretches of wakefulness in between. It is not a healthy pattern, I know, but it is the only way I can manage. The darkness presses in on me, heavy and suffocating, and I cannot bear to face it all at once. I've been reading Thomas Brennan's letters. I know I said I would not, but the temptation proved too strong. They are heartbreaking, these letters. They tell the story of a man slowly losing his grip on reality, a man consumed by guilt and loneliness, and a desperate, aching love for a woman he could not reach. In the early letters, he is hopeful, optimistic, certain that his time at the lighthouse will pass quickly and he will soon be reunited with his Eleanor. But as the months go by, his tone changes. He becomes paranoid, suspicious, convinced that something is watching him from the water. He writes of shadows that move against the current, of sounds that have no source, of dreams that feel more real than waking life. By the final letter, dated just 2 weeks before I arrived, he is barely coherent. He writes of a door that should not exist, a door at the base of the lighthouse that leads somewhere else, somewhere dark and cold and hungry. He writes that he is going to open it. He writes that he has no choice. I searched the base of the lighthouse this afternoon. There is no door. There is only solid stone, the same stone that has been here since the lighthouse was built. Thomas Brennan was mad. That is the only explanation. The isolation broke him, as it breaks so many who attempt this life. I must not let it break me. November 22nd, 1891. I have stopped looking for the creature. It comes when it comes, and no amount of watching will summon it or drive it away. Instead, I have turned my attention to the sky. The stars out here are magnificent, unmarred by the smoke and light of civilization. On clear nights, I can see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like a river of light, and I can pick out constellations I have only read about in books. Orion the Hunter, with his belt of 3 bright stars, Cassiopeia the vain queen seated on her throne, the Great Bear and the Little Bear circling endlessly around the North Star. I have begun keeping a record of my observations, noting the positions of the planets, the phases of the moon, the occasional meteor streaking across the darkness. It gives me something to focus on, something to study, something to keep my mind occupied during the long, lonely nights. I wonder sometimes what the stars think of us, if they think at all. Do they look down at this tiny planet, this insignificant speck of rock and water, and marvel at the creatures who have learned to capture fire and bend it to their will? Do they pity us, trapped on our little world, unable to reach the vast expanses of space that stretch between us? Or are they indifferent as the sea, burning their ancient light without care or concern for who might be watching? I suspect the latter. The universe is not cruel, but it is not kind either. It simply is, and we must find our own meaning within it. November 25th, 1891. Something strange happened last night. I was in the lantern room, performing my evening inspection, when I heard a sound from below. It was a knocking, 3 sharp raps against the door at the base of the tower. I froze, my heart suddenly racing. No one should be here. No one could be here. The supply boat is still weeks away, and no other vessel would approach this rock in the darkness. I waited, listening, hardly daring to breathe. The knocking came again, louder this time, more insistent. 3 raps, then silence, then 3 more. I descended the stairs slowly, my lamp held out before me, casting wild shadows on the curved walls. The knocking continued as I approached, a steady rhythm that seemed to match the beating of my own heart. When I reached the door, I pressed my ear against the wood and listened. I could hear the wind outside, the crash of waves against the rocks, and beneath it all, a sound like breathing. Slow, deep, patient. I stood there for what felt like hours, my hand on the latch, torn between the need to know and the fear of what I might find. In the end, fear won. I did not open the door. I climbed back to the lantern room and sat there until dawn, watching the light turn, listening for any sound from below. The knocking did not come again. November 28th, 1891. I have convinced myself that what I heard was nothing more than the wind. These old buildings are full of strange sounds, creaks and groans and rattles that can easily be mistaken for something more sinister. The knocking was probably a loose shutter or a piece of debris blown against the door by a gust. There is no one out there. There cannot be anyone out there. I am alone on this rock as I have been since the day I arrived, and I will remain alone until the supply boat comes to relieve me. This is the truth. This is the only truth. I must hold on to it, or I will lose myself entirely. I have been thinking about Eleanor Brennan, Thomas's wife. I wonder if she ever learned what happened to her husband. I wonder if she waited for him, year after year, hoping for a letter that never came, a return that never happened. I wonder if she is still waiting now, an old woman sitting by a window, watching the road for a figure that will never appear. The thought fills me with a sadness I cannot name. We are all waiting for something, I suppose. We are all watching for someone who may never come. Perhaps that is the human condition, this endless, hopeful, heartbreaking waiting. Perhaps it is what makes us human. December 1st, 1891. The first snow fell today. I woke to find the rocks dusted with white, the sea a dark contrast against the pale landscape. It was beautiful, in a stark and unforgiving way. I stood on the gallery for a long time, watching the flakes drift down from the gray sky, feeling them melt against my skin. Snow is rare this far out to sea. The salt in the air usually keeps it at bay. But today the conditions were just right, and for a few hours my little world was transformed into something magical. I thought about Christmas as I watched the snow fall. It is less than a month away now, and I will spend it alone, as I have spent every day since September. There will be no tree, no presents, no family gathered around a warm fire. There will only be me and the light and the endless sea. I should feel sad about this, I suppose, but instead I feel a strange kind of peace. Christmas is about hope, about light in the darkness, about the promise of renewal. And what am I if not a keeper of light? What is this lighthouse if not a beacon of hope for all who sail these treacherous waters? I will celebrate in my own way. I will keep the light burning brighter than ever, and I will trust that somewhere out there someone is grateful for its glow. December 5th, 1891. The creature came again last night, but this time it was different. This time it did not simply circle the lighthouse and disappear. This time it stopped. It rose from the water just beyond the rocks, its massive form silhouetted against the beam of the light, and it stayed there, motionless, for nearly an hour. I watched it from the gallery, too fascinated to be afraid, too curious to look away. It was enormous, far larger than any whale I have ever seen or read about. Its skin was dark and smooth, glistening with moisture, and along its back I could see what looked like ridges or fins, rising and falling with each slow breath. And then it made a sound, a low, mournful cry that seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through the air and the stone and my very bones. It was the saddest sound I have ever heard, filled with a loneliness that mirrored my own. I found myself crying, tears streaming down my face, though I could not have said why. When the sound faded, the creature slipped beneath the waves and was gone. I did not sleep at all that night. I sat in the lantern room, replaying the moment in my mind, trying to understand what I had witnessed. I am no closer to an answer now than I was then. December 8th, 1891. I have decided to name the creature. It seems only fitting, given that I have named everything else in my small domain. I have chosen the name Leviathan, after the great sea monster of biblical legend. It is a grand name, perhaps too grand for a creature I do not even fully understand. But it feels right. Leviathan is ancient and mysterious and powerful, and so is the being that visits my waters. I do not know what it wants or why it comes, but I no longer fear it. How can I fear something that sounds so lonely, so lost, so desperately in need of connection? We are kindred spirits, Leviathan and I. We are both exiles, both watchers, both keepers of secrets that no one else will ever know. December 12th, 1891. The supply boat should arrive in 2 weeks. I have been preparing a list of items I need: replacement prisms for the lens, more coal for the stove, fresh provisions to supplement my dwindling stores. I have also been preparing myself, mentally and emotionally, for the shock of human contact. It has been nearly 3 months since I spoke to another person. 3 months since I heard a voice other than my own. I am not sure how I will react when Captain Gregor's weathered face appears at my door. I may weep with relief. I may be unable to speak at all, or I may find that I have grown so accustomed to solitude that the presence of another human being feels like an intrusion, an invasion of the private world I have built for myself. I suppose I will find out soon enough. December 15th, 1891. I have been rereading my earlier entries, and I am struck by how much I have changed since I arrived at this place. The man who wrote those first pages was nervous, uncertain, still clinging to the habits and assumptions of his former life. He worried about loneliness, about boredom, about losing his mind to the silence. He did not understand what he was getting into, but the man writing now is different. He has learned to find comfort in routine, meaning in monotony, beauty in the bleakest of landscapes. He has faced storms and shadows and creatures from the deep, and he has emerged, if not unscathed, then at least intact. He has discovered reserves of strength he never knew he possessed. I am not the same person I was 3 months ago. I am not sure I could ever go back to being that person, even if I wanted to. The lighthouse has changed me, shaped me, molded me into something new. Whether that something is better or worse than what came before, I cannot say. But it is different. It is undeniably, irrevocably different, and perhaps that is enough. December 18th, 1891. A storm is building on the horizon. I can see it from the gallery, a dark mass of clouds gathering in the west, moving slowly but inexorably toward my little rock. The barometer has been falling all day, and the wind has shifted to the north, bringing with it a bitter cold that cuts through my heaviest coat. I have secured everything that can be secured and laid in extra supplies of coal and food. If this storm is anything like the last one, I may be confined to the lighthouse for days. I find that I am not afraid. The first storm terrified me, left me sleepless and shaking, convinced that each gust of wind would be the one to bring the tower crashing down. But I have weathered storms since then, have learned to trust in the strength of these walls, the resilience of this structure. The lighthouse has stood for 40 years. It will stand for 40 more, and I will stand with it, keeping the light burning, guiding ships through the darkness, doing the job I was sent here to do. Let the storm come. I am ready. December 20th, 1891. The storm arrived yesterday evening and has not let up since. The wind is stronger than anything I have experienced, a constant howling fury that makes the very stones tremble. The waves are monstrous, rising 30 or 40 feet before crashing against the rocks with a force that shakes the entire tower. I have not been able to leave the lantern room for more than a few minutes at a time. The light must keep burning. Ships may be out there struggling against the same tempest, desperately searching for a beacon to guide them to safety. I will not let them down. I have not slept in nearly 40 hours. Every time I close my eyes, I hear a new sound, a new threat, a new reason to climb the stairs and check on the light. The clockwork mechanism is straining under the pressure, the gears grinding louder than usual, the rotation slightly uneven. I have been winding it by hand, supplementing the mechanical action with my own strength, determined to keep the beam turning no matter what. My arms ache, my eyes burn, but I will not stop. I cannot stop. This is what I am here for. This is my purpose. December 21st, 1891. The storm broke sometime in the early hours of the morning. I did not notice at first, so accustomed had I become to the constant noise. But gradually the wind died down, the waves subsided, and a strange calm settled over the lighthouse. I climbed to the gallery and looked out at a world transformed. The sea was littered with debris, broken masts and shattered hulls and tangles of rope and canvas. A ship had gone down somewhere nearby, caught in the storm, unable to find safe harbor. I scanned the water for survivors, for any sign of life, but there was nothing. Only wreckage, spreading slowly across the surface like a wound that would not heal. I spent the day salvaging what I could, barrels of provisions miraculously intact, lengths of good rope, a wooden chest that had washed up on the rocks, its lock broken, its contents scattered. Inside I found clothing, a pocket watch, a leather journal filled with entries in a language I do not recognize, and a photograph, water-damaged but still legible, showing a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes. Someone's wife, perhaps, someone's daughter, someone who will never know what happened to the person who carried her image across the sea. I buried the photograph beneath a cairn of stones on the highest point of the rock. It seemed like the right thing to do, a memorial, however small, for a life that was lost. I said a few words, though I am not a religious man, and I stood there for a long time watching the sun set over the calm water. The light came on behind me, its beam sweeping across the wreckage, illuminating the evidence of tragedy. I wondered if it had been enough. I wondered if the ship had seen the light, had tried to reach it, had come so close to safety before the sea claimed it. I will never know. Some questions have no answers. December 24th, 1891, Christmas Eve. I had almost forgotten, so consumed have I been with the aftermath of the storm. But this morning I woke with the date clear in my mind, and I decided to mark the occasion in whatever small way I could. I cleaned the lighthouse from top to bottom, scrubbing the floors and polishing the brass and washing the windows until they gleamed. I prepared a special meal, the best I could manage with my limited supplies: tinned beef, potatoes, a small cake I had been saving for just such an occasion. I even found a bottle of wine among the salvage from the shipwreck, and I allowed myself a single glass with dinner. As the sun set, I climbed to the lantern room and lit the lamp with more ceremony than usual. I spoke aloud, addressing the light as if it were a congregation, wishing it a Merry Christmas, thanking it for its faithful service, promising to care for it in the year to come. Then I descended to my quarters and sat by the stove, watching the flames dance behind the iron grate, thinking of all the Christmases I had spent before this one. The noise and laughter of family gatherings, the smell of pine and cinnamon, the warmth of loved ones pressed close in a crowded room. Those memories feel distant now, like stories I read in a book long ago. This is my life now. This is my home. And despite everything, despite the loneliness and the fear and the endless aching solitude, I am grateful for it. December 25th, 1891, Christmas Day. I woke late, having slept more soundly than I have in weeks. The storm has passed, the sea is calm, and the sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue. I spent the morning on the gallery, watching the puffins wheel and dive, listening to their strange, mournful cries. They are my congregation now, my community, my family. I wished them a Merry Christmas, and I like to think they understood. In the afternoon, I wrote letters. One to my sister Margaret, telling her I am well, describing the beauty of this place, assuring her that I have found a kind of peace here that I never knew on the mainland. One to my mother, though she has been dead for nearly 10 years, telling her all the things I never had the courage to say when she was alive. And one to myself, to the man I will be a year from now, asking him to remember this moment, this feeling, this hard-won contentment. I sealed them all and placed them in the wooden box with the others. My collection of unsent letters is growing. Perhaps someday I will send them. Perhaps I never will. Either way, the writing helps. It always helps. December 28, 1891. The supply boat arrived today, 3 days late due to the storm. I saw it approaching from the gallery, a small speck on the horizon that grew slowly larger as the hours passed. By the time it reached the rock, my heart was pounding with anticipation. I climbed down to the ledge and waited, watching as Captain Gregor maneuvered his vessel through the treacherous waters, finally dropping anchor in the small sheltered cove below the lighthouse. He looked older than I remembered, his face more weathered, his movements slower and more deliberate. But his eyes were the same, sharp and knowing, taking in everything without seeming to look at anything at all. He did not speak as he climbed the rocks toward me, did not offer a greeting or a handshake. He simply nodded once and began unloading the supplies. I helped him carry the crates up to the lighthouse, working in silence, grateful for the company, even if it came without conversation. It was not until we had finished, not until the boat was loaded with my outgoing mail and the empty crates from the previous delivery, that Gregor finally spoke. He asked if I was well. I told him I was. He asked if I had seen anything strange. I hesitated, thinking of Leviathan, thinking of the knocking at the door, thinking of all the mysteries I had accumulated over the past 3 months. But in the end, I simply shook my head. Some things are not meant to be shared. Some things belong only to the lighthouse and the sea and the man who keeps the light burning. Gregor nodded again, as if he understood, as if he had heard the same answer from every keeper who had come before me. Then he climbed back down to his boat, cast off the lines, and motored away into the gathering dusk. I watched until he disappeared over the horizon, and then I climbed the stairs to light the lamp. The light came on, bright and steady, sweeping across the water in its endless, reassuring rhythm. I was alone again, but I was not lonely, not anymore. January 1st, 1892. A new year. I marked the occasion by staying awake until midnight, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the distant chime of the clock I do not have. When the moment came, when one year ended and another began, I felt nothing. No surge of hope, no wave of nostalgia, no sense of renewal or rebirth. Time moves differently out here, I have learned. It does not march forward in neat, orderly increments. It flows in eddies, pools, and rushes, sometimes racing ahead and sometimes standing perfectly still. A new year is just another day, another rotation of the light, another entry in this endless journal. But I made a resolution anyway, because that is what one does on New Year's Day. I resolved to be kinder to myself. I have been harsh in my self-judgments, critical of every mistake, unforgiving of every weakness. But I am only human, and humans are imperfect by nature. We stumble, we fall, we pick ourselves up and carry on. That is all any of us can do. That is all I can do. So I will be kinder. I will forgive myself for the broken prism, for the sleepless nights, for the fears and doubts that plague me in the darkness. I will treat myself as I would treat a friend, with patience and compassion and understanding. It is the least I can do for the only companion I have. January 5th, 1892. I have begun a new project to occupy my time. I am building a model of the lighthouse, using driftwood and scraps of metal salvaged from the shipwreck. It is slow, painstaking work requiring precision and patience, but I find it deeply satisfying. Each piece must be carefully shaped and fitted. Each joint must be strong and true. When it is finished, it will be a perfect replica of my home, small enough to hold in my hands, detailed enough to capture every window, every stone, every curve of the spiral staircase. I do not know why I am building it. Perhaps I need something to show for my time here, some tangible proof that I existed, that I mattered. Perhaps I simply need something to do with my hands, something to focus on during the long, empty hours. Or perhaps I am trying to understand this place, to capture its essence in miniature, to hold it close and examine it from every angle. Whatever the reason, the work brings me peace. And peace is a precious commodity out here. January 10th, 1892. Leviathan returned last night. I had not seen it since before the storm, and I had begun to wonder if it had moved on, found other waters to haunt, other lighthouses to circle. But there it was, rising from the depths just as the moon reached its zenith, its massive form casting a shadow across the silver water. It did not make a sound this time, did not cry out in that mournful, heartbreaking voice. It simply floated there, watching me as I watched it, two lonely creatures sharing a moment of silent communion. I spoke to it. I do not know why, and I do not know what I said. The words came unbidden, spilling out of me like water from a broken vessel. I told it about my life, my fears, my hopes. I told it about the lighthouse and the light and the endless turning beam. I told it about Thomas Brennan and his unsent letters, about Eleanor waiting by a window that would never open, about all the ships that had passed by without stopping, all the lives that had continued without me. I spoke until my voice was hoarse, until the words ran out, until there was nothing left to say. And then Leviathan sank beneath the waves, slowly, gracefully, without a ripple to mark its passing. I stood on the gallery for a long time afterward, staring at the place where it had been, feeling lighter than I had in months. I had confessed my sins to the sea, and the sea had accepted them without judgment. It was enough. It was more than enough. January 15th, 1892. The days are growing longer now, the sun rising a little earlier each morning, setting a little later each evening. I can feel the world tilting toward spring, toward warmth, toward renewal. The puffins are more active than they have been in weeks, diving and calling and squabbling over the best nesting spots. Even the sea seems gentler, its waves softer, its moods less volatile. Winter is not over yet, I know. There will be more storms, more cold, more long nights of watching and waiting. But the worst is behind me. I have survived my first winter at the Lighthouse. I have proven that I can endure. I finished the model today. It sits on my desk now, a perfect miniature of the tower that surrounds me. I am proud of it, prouder than I have been of anything in a long time. It is not just a model. It is a testament, a monument, a declaration of survival. I was here, it says. I built this. I mattered. When I leave this place, if I ever leave this place, I will take the model with me. It will remind me of who I was, who I became, who I might yet be. January 20th, 1892. I received a letter today delivered by a passing fishing vessel. It was from my sister Margaret, written in response to the letter I sent with Captain Gregor last month. She writes that she is relieved to hear I am well, that she has been worried about me, that she prays for my safety every night. She writes that the children ask about me constantly, wanting to know what it is like to live in a lighthouse, wanting to know if I have seen any pirates or sea monsters. I smiled at that, if only they knew. But there was something else in the letter, something that gave me pause. Margaret writes that she has heard rumors about this lighthouse, stories passed down from keeper to keeper, whispered in the taverns of the coastal towns. She does not say what the rumors are, only that they trouble her, only that she wishes I would come home. I do not know what to make of this. I have heard no rumors, seen no evidence of anything that might inspire such tales. But then again, I have seen Leviathan. I have heard the knocking at the door. I have read Thomas Brennan's letters and found the note hidden in the book. Perhaps the rumors are true. Perhaps this place is haunted, cursed, touched by something beyond human understanding. Or perhaps the rumors are nothing more than stories invented by bored sailors to pass the time, embellished with each retelling until they bear no resemblance to reality. I will not let them frighten me. I have come too far, endured too much to be driven away by whispers and shadows. This is my home now. This is my life, and I will live it on my own terms. Rumors be damned. January 25th, 1892. I have been thinking about the nature of fear. It is a strange thing, fear. It can paralyze us, trap us, keep us from living the lives we were meant to live. But it can also protect us, warn us, keep us safe from dangers we might otherwise ignore. The trick, I think, is learning to distinguish between the two, learning to recognize when fear is a friend and when it is an enemy, learning to listen to it without being controlled by it. I was afraid when I came to this lighthouse, afraid of the solitude, the silence, the vast and indifferent sea. I was afraid of losing my mind, of becoming like Thomas Brennan, scribbling desperate letters to a wife who would never read them. But I faced those fears one by one, and I discovered that they were smaller than I thought. The solitude became a comfort, the silence became a companion, the sea became a teacher, showing me things about myself I never knew. I am still afraid sometimes. I would be a fool not to be, but the fear no longer controls me. I control it, and that makes all the difference. January 30th, 1892. A ship passed close today, close enough that I could see the faces of the crew on deck. They waved to me, and I waved back, and for a moment we were connected, two groups of humans acknowledging each other across the vast expanse of water. It was a small thing, a trivial thing, but it filled me with a warmth I cannot describe. "We are not alone," that wave said. "We see you. We know you are there." I watched the ship until it disappeared over the horizon, and then I climbed to the lantern room to begin my evening routine. The light came on bright and steady, sweeping across the water in its endless, reassuring rhythm. Somewhere out there, ships were sailing through the darkness, their crews trusting in the light to guide them home. I was part of something larger than myself, something important, something that mattered. It was a good feeling. It is always a good feeling. February 3rd, 1892. The monotony of the days has become a kind of meditation. I wake, I tend the light, I eat, I read, I write, I sleep. The same actions repeated endlessly until they lose all meaning and become pure ritual. There is freedom in this, I have discovered. Freedom from choice, from decision, from the endless weighing of options that consumes so much of our lives on the mainland. Here, there are no options. There is only the light and the duty to keep it burning. Everything else falls away. I have been reading the Bible that Thomas Brennan left behind, the one with the pages torn out. I am not a religious man, as I have said, but there is comfort in the familiar rhythms of the language, the ancient stories of struggle and redemption. I read about Noah, alone on his ark, surrounded by water on all sides, waiting for the flood to recede. I read about Jonah, swallowed by the whale, trapped in darkness, praying for deliverance. I read about Jesus wandering in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, tempted by the devil, sustained by faith alone. These stories speak to me in a way they never did before. They are stories of isolation, of endurance, of the human spirit tested to its limits and emerging, somehow intact. I wonder which pages Thomas tore out and why. I have searched the lighthouse for them, but they are nowhere to be found. Perhaps he burned them. Perhaps he threw them into the sea. Perhaps they contained something he could not bear to read, some truth too terrible to face. I will never know. The Bible keeps its secrets, just like everything else in this place. February 8th, 1892. I saw something on the rocks today. At first, I thought it was a seal hauled out to rest in the weak winter sun. But as I watched, it moved in a way that no seal moves, rising up on limbs that were too long, too thin, too jointed. I grabbed my telescope and trained it on the spot, my hands trembling, my heart racing. But by the time I had focused the lens, the thing was gone. There was nothing on the rocks but seaweed and spray. I am not sure what I saw. I am not sure I saw anything at all. The mind plays tricks, especially out here, especially after months of solitude. I have learned not to trust my eyes, not to trust my ears, not to trust any of the senses that once seemed so reliable. Reality is slippery in this place. It shifts and changes, refusing to stay fixed, refusing to be pinned down. I must hold on to what I know to be true. The lighthouse is real. The light is real. My duty is real. Everything else is uncertain. February 12th, 1892. The knocking came again last night. 3 raps, then silence, then 3 more. I was in my quarters reading by the light of a single candle when I heard it. My blood ran cold. I sat perfectly still, hardly breathing, listening for any other sound. The knocking continued, patient and persistent, as if whatever was making it had all the time in the world. This time, I did not go to the door. I did not even rise from my chair. I simply sat there, staring at the page I had been reading, the words blurring before my eyes until the knocking finally stopped. It took nearly an hour of sitting in silence, an hour of waiting, an hour of wondering what was on the other side of that door. When it was over, I climbed to the lantern room and stayed there until dawn, watching the light turn, taking comfort in its steady, mechanical rhythm. I do not know what is knocking at my door. I do not want to know. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. Some doors are better left unopened. I will keep the light burning, and I will trust that it is enough. It has to be enough. February 15th, 1892. I dreamed of Eleanor Brennan last night. I have never seen her, have no idea what she looks like, but in my dream, she was as real as anyone I have ever known. She was standing on a cliff overlooking the sea, her dark hair whipping in the wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was waiting for someone. She had been waiting for a very long time. I approached her, and she turned to look at me. Her face was sad, so sad, but there was no accusation in her eyes, no blame. She simply looked at me, and I understood. She knew her husband was never coming home. She had always known. But she waited anyway, because waiting was all she had left, because hope, even false hope, was better than despair. I woke with tears on my face. I do not know why the dream affected me so deeply. Perhaps because I see myself in Eleanor, waiting for something that may never come. Perhaps because I see myself in Thomas, trapped in a prison of my own making, unable to reach the people I love. Or perhaps because I understand, finally, that we are all waiting. We are all hoping. We are all standing on cliffs, watching horizons, searching for ships that may never appear. February 20th, 1892. Spring is coming. I can feel it in the air, smell it on the wind, see it in the lengthening days and the softening light. The puffins are nesting now, their burrows dotting the cliffs like holes in a piece of cheese. I watch them come and go, carrying fish in their colorful beaks, tending to eggs I cannot see. Life continues even here, even on this barren rock in the middle of the sea. It is a miracle, really. A small, ordinary, everyday miracle. I have been thinking about what I will do when my contract ends. I signed on for 2 years, which means I have another 18 months to go. 18 months of solitude, of silence, of watching the light turn. It seems like an eternity. But I know from experience that time moves strangely out here. Days that feel endless in the moment become weeks that pass in a blur. Before I know it, the supply boat will arrive with my replacement, and I will have to decide whether to stay or go. I do not know what I will choose. Part of me longs for the mainland, for the noise and chaos and connection I left behind. But another part of me, a part that grows stronger with each passing day, wants to stay. This is my home now. This is where I belong. The thought of leaving fills me with a sadness I cannot explain. February 25th, 1892. Leviathan came again last night, but this time it was not alone. There were others with it, smaller shapes moving through the water, circling the lighthouse in a slow, deliberate dance. I counted 7 of them, though there may have been more hidden beneath the surface. They moved in perfect synchronization, rising and falling together, their dark forms barely visible against the darker sea. I watched them for hours, transfixed by their beauty, their grace, their alien otherness. They were not whales, I am certain of that now. They were something else, something I have no name for, something that exists outside the boundaries of human knowledge. But they were not threatening, they were not hostile. They were simply there, sharing the night with me, keeping me company in my solitude. When dawn came, they slipped beneath the waves and were gone. I stood on the gallery, watching the sun rise over the empty sea, feeling a strange sense of loss. I had grown accustomed to their presence, had come to think of them as friends, as companions, as fellow travelers on this lonely journey. I hope they will return. I hope I will see them again. March 1st, 1892. I have been here for 6 months. Half a year of my life spent on this rock, tending this light, watching this sea. It feels like both an eternity and an instant. I can barely remember the man I was when I arrived, the fears and doubts that plagued me, the uncertainty that clouded my every thought. That man is gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone calmer, someone more at peace with himself and his place in the world. I celebrated the anniversary by climbing to the top of the lighthouse and watching the sunset. The sky was a riot of color, oranges and pinks and purples bleeding into each other like watercolors on wet paper. The sea reflected the light, turning the water into a mirror of fire. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. I stood there until the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, and then I lit the lamp and watched the beam sweep across the darkening water. 6 months down, 18 to go. I can do this. I know I can do this. March 5th, 1892. I found something today that I cannot explain. I was exploring the rocks at low tide, searching for interesting shells and stones to add to my collection, when I came across a cave I had never noticed before. It was hidden behind a large boulder, its entrance barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. I hesitated for a long moment, remembering Thomas Brennan's letter about the door that should not exist. But curiosity won out, as it always does, and I squeezed through the opening into the darkness beyond. The cave was larger than I expected, a natural chamber carved out of the rock by centuries of waves. The walls were slick with moisture, and the air smelled of salt and something else, something organic, something alive. I lit a match and held it up, trying to see into the shadows. The flame flickered and danced, casting wild patterns on the stone. And then I saw them. Carvings, dozens of them, covering every surface of the cave, from floor to ceiling. They were crude but recognizable, depicting scenes I could not understand. Figures that might have been human, or might have been something else. Shapes that might have been ships, or might have been creatures. And in the center of it all, repeated again and again, a single image, a lighthouse, its beam cutting through the darkness, surrounded by shapes rising from the water. I do not know who made these carvings or when. They could be centuries old, or they could be recent. But one thing is clear, I am not the first to see the creatures in the water. I am not the first to wonder what they are, what they want, why they come. Others have been here before me, have witnessed the same mysteries, have tried to make sense of the same inexplicable events. The thought is both comforting and terrifying. March 10th, 1892. I have returned to the cave several times since my initial discovery, each time bringing a lantern and spending hours studying the carvings. I have begun to make sketches of them in my journal, trying to capture every detail, every line, every curve. Some of the images are clear enough to interpret. Ships caught in storms, their masts broken, their crews struggling against the waves. The lighthouse standing tall against the chaos, its light a beacon of hope. And the creatures, always the creatures, rising from the depths, circling, watching, waiting. But other images are more obscure. There are symbols I do not recognize, patterns that seem to follow some internal logic I cannot grasp. There are figures that might be human but have too many limbs, too many eyes, proportions that defy anatomy. And there are scenes that seem to depict rituals of some kind, gatherings of figures around fires, offerings made to the sea, dances performed under starless skies. I do not know what to make of any of this. I am a lighthouse keeper, not an archaeologist or a historian. I have no training in interpreting ancient art, no framework for understanding what I am seeing. But I cannot shake the feeling that these carvings are important, that they contain some message I am meant to receive. I just have to figure out how to read it. March 15th, 1892. The supply boat came today, bringing provisions and news from the mainland. Captain Gregor was more talkative than usual, perhaps because the weather was fair and the sea was calm. He told me about the winter that had just passed, the storms that had battered the coast, the ships that had been lost. He told me about political upheavals in distant capitals, about scientific discoveries that were changing the way people understood the world, about scandals and triumphs and tragedies that meant nothing to me but everything to the people who lived them. I listened politely, nodding in the right places, asking questions when they seemed expected. But the whole time my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the cave, about the carvings, about the creatures that visited my waters. I was thinking about Thomas Brennan and his unsent letters, about Eleanor waiting by her window, about all the keepers who would come before me and all the keepers who would come after. The news from the mainland seemed so small, so trivial, compared to the mysteries that surrounded me. When Gregor left, I felt a sense of relief I am not proud of. I had grown so accustomed to solitude that the presence of another person felt like an intrusion. I watched his boat disappear over the horizon, and then I climbed to the lantern room and sat in silence, listening to the click of the clockwork, watching the light turn. This is my world now. This is where I belong. March 20th, 1892. I have made a decision. I am going to try to communicate with Leviathan. I do not know if it is possible, do not know if the creature has any capacity for understanding human language or intention. But I have to try. The carvings in the cave suggest that others have attempted contact before, that there is some history of interaction between the keepers of this light and the beings that dwell in these waters. Perhaps I can learn from their example. Perhaps I can succeed where they failed. I have begun by establishing a routine. Every night after I light the lamp, I go to the gallery and speak aloud. I tell Leviathan about my day, my thoughts, my feelings. I describe the weather, the state of the sea, the behavior of the puffins. I recite poetry, sing songs, tell stories I remember from my childhood. I do not know if the creature hears me, do not know if it understands. But I speak anyway, night after night, sending my words out into the darkness like messages in bottles, hoping that someday, somehow, they will reach their destination. March 25th, 1892. Something has changed. I cannot say exactly what, but I feel it in my bones, in my blood, in the very air I breathe. The lighthouse feels different now, charged with an energy I cannot name. The light seems brighter, the beam more focused, the rotation more precise. And the creatures in the water have become more active, appearing almost every night now, circling closer than ever before. Last night, Leviathan surfaced directly below the gallery, so close I could have reached out and touched it. Its skin was not black as I had thought, but a deep iridescent blue, shimmering with colors that shifted and changed as the light passed over it. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were large and luminous, reflecting the beam like mirrors. It looked at me, and I looked at it, and for a moment I felt a connection I cannot describe. A sense of recognition, of understanding, of kinship. And then it spoke. Not in words, not in any language I know, but in images, in feelings, in impressions that flooded my mind like water through a broken dam. I saw the ocean as it sees it, vast and deep and teeming with life. I saw the lighthouse as it sees it, a pillar of fire in the darkness, a beacon that has burned for generations. I saw myself as it sees me, small and fragile and brave, a keeper of the flame, a guardian of the light. I do not know how long the vision lasted, seconds perhaps, or hours. When it ended, Leviathan was gone, and I was alone on the gallery, trembling, weeping, overwhelmed by what I had experienced. I am not the same person I was before. I will never be the same person again. March 30th, 1892. I have been trying to make sense of what happened, to put into words an experience that defies language. The vision Leviathan shared with me was not a message in any conventional sense. It was more like a gift, a glimpse into a world I never knew existed. A world beneath the waves, ancient and mysterious, governed by laws I cannot comprehend. I understand now why the creatures circle the lighthouse. They are drawn to the light, not as moths are drawn to a flame, but as pilgrims are drawn to a shrine. The light means something to them, represents something, symbolizes something I am only beginning to grasp. It is a boundary, perhaps a marker between their world and ours. Or it is a promise, a covenant, an agreement made long ago between beings who are no longer remembered. The carvings in the cave make more sense to me now. They are not just records of sightings, not just attempts to document the inexplicable. They are prayers, offerings, acts of devotion. The keepers who came before me were not just tending a light, they were participating in something sacred, something that transcends the boundaries of human understanding. And now I am part of it too. April 5th, 1892. Spring has arrived in earnest. The days are warm, the nights are mild, and the sea has taken on a gentler aspect, its waves rolling rather than crashing, its mood softer and more forgiving. The puffins have hatched their eggs, and the cliffs are alive with the sound of chicks demanding food. I watch them from the gallery, marveling at the persistence of life, the determination of these small creatures to survive and thrive in such a harsh environment. I've settled into a new routine, one that incorporates my nightly communion with Leviathan. I no longer simply speak to the creature. I listen. I open my mind, quiet my thoughts, and wait for the impressions to come. They are not always clear, not always comprehensible. Sometimes they are just feelings, emotions without names, sensations without sources. But sometimes they are more. Sometimes I catch glimpses of things I cannot explain, visions of places I have never been, memories that are not my own. I am learning a new language, I think, a language of images and feelings, of impressions and intuitions. It is slow going, and I make many mistakes, but I am making progress. I can feel it. And with each passing day, the connection between me and the creatures grows stronger. April 10th, 1892. I received another letter from Margaret today. She writes that she is worried about me, that my last letter was strange, that I spoke of things she does not understand. She begs me to come home, to leave this place before it is too late. She says she has heard more rumors, darker rumors, stories of keepers who went mad, who disappeared, who were found wandering the mainland with no memory of who they were or where they had been. I do not know how to respond. I cannot tell her the truth, cannot explain what I have seen and experienced. She would think me mad, and perhaps she would be right. Perhaps I am mad. Perhaps everything I have witnessed is nothing more than the product of a mind unraveling under the strain of isolation. But it does not feel like madness. It feels like awakening. It feels like finally, after a lifetime of sleepwalking, I am beginning to see the world as it truly is. I will write to Margaret and assure her that I am well. I will tell her that the rumors are exaggerated, that the lighthouse is just a lighthouse, that I am just a man doing a job. I will lie because the truth is too strange, too wonderful, too terrifying to share. Some things must be experienced to be believed. Some things cannot be put into words. April 15th, 1892. The knocking has stopped. I realized it yesterday when I was lying in bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the lighthouse, the wind, the waves, the click of the clockwork. But no knocking. No 3 raps followed by silence, followed by 3 more. The door is quiet now, as quiet as it should be, as quiet as it was when I first arrived. I do not know what this means. Perhaps whatever was knocking has given up, has moved on, has found another door to haunt. Or perhaps it was never there at all, just a trick of the wind, a quirk of the architecture, a sound that my lonely mind transformed into something sinister. I will never know for certain. But I am grateful for the silence. I am grateful for one less mystery to keep me awake at night. The light keeps them away, the note said. Perhaps it does. Perhaps the light is more than just a beacon for ships, more than just a warning of rocks and shoals. Perhaps it is a ward, a protection, a barrier against things that dwell in the darkness. I do not know. I may never know. But I will keep the light burning, just in case. I will keep it burning until my last breath. May 25th, 1892. I have decided to record everything I have learned in a separate document, a guide for whoever comes after me. Not the technical details of lighthouse keeping, the maintenance schedules and supply lists and emergency procedures. Those are already documented in the official manuals. No, I want to record the other things, the things that no manual mentions, the things that can only be learned through experience. I will write about the creatures, about Leviathan and its kin, about the visions they share and the connection they offer. I will write about the cave and its carvings, about the history that is hidden in plain sight. I will write about the knocking at the door, about the note in the book, about Thomas Brennan and his unsent letters. I will write about the loneliness and the fear, but also about the peace and the purpose, the sense of belonging that comes from being part of something larger than yourself. I do not know if anyone will read what I write. I do not know if anyone will believe it. But I will write it anyway, because it needs to be written, because the truth deserves to be told, because the next keeper deserves to know what he is getting into. Perhaps he will think me mad, as I once thought Thomas Brennan mad. Or perhaps he will understand, as I have come to understand. Either way, the choice will be his. May 30th, 1892. The creatures came in force last night, more than I have ever seen before. They filled the water around the lighthouse, their dark forms rising and falling in the moonlight, their voices joining in a chorus that seemed to shake the very stones beneath my feet. I stood on the gallery, overwhelmed, tears streaming down my face, feeling more alive than I have ever felt in my life. And then Leviathan rose from the center of the gathering, larger than ever, its body glowing with an inner light that rivaled the beam of the lighthouse itself. It looked at me, and I looked at it. And in that moment, I understood everything. I understood why I was here, why the light mattered, why the creatures came. I understood the covenant that had been made long ago between the keepers of the light and the guardians of the deep. I understood my place in the great chain of being, my role in the eternal dance of light and darkness. I cannot put what I understood into words. Language is too small, too limited, too bound by the constraints of human thought. But I can say this: I am not afraid anymore. I am not lonely anymore. I am exactly where I am supposed to be, doing exactly what I am supposed to do. And when my time here is over, when I pass the torch to the next keeper, I will do so with a full heart and a clear conscience, knowing that I have fulfilled my purpose, that I have kept the faith, that I have kept the light burning. June 1st, 1892, 10 months. I have been here for 10 months now, and I have 8 more to go. The days are long and warm, the nights short and mild. The sea is calm, the sky is clear, and the light burns bright and steady, sweeping across the water in its endless, reassuring rhythm. I am at peace. I am content. I am home. This morning I climbed to the top of the lighthouse and watched the sun rise over the eastern horizon. The sky turned from black to purple to pink to gold, and the sea caught the light and threw it back, a million tiny mirrors reflecting the glory of a new day. I thought about all the sunrises I had witnessed from this spot, all the sunsets, all the storms and calms and everything in between. I thought about the keepers who had come before me, who had stood in this same spot, who had watched this same horizon. And I thought about the keepers who would come after, who would inherit this light, this duty, this sacred trust. We are all links in a chain, I realized. A chain that stretches back through time, connecting us to everyone who has ever kept a light burning in the darkness. And we are all links in another chain, one that stretches forward into the future, connecting us to everyone who will ever keep a light burning after we are gone. We are not alone. We have never been alone. We are part of something vast and ancient and beautiful, something that transcends the boundaries of individual lives and individual deaths. The light keeps them away, the note said, but I know now that it does more than that. The light brings them together. The light connects them. The light reminds them that they are not alone, that there is hope in the darkness, that somewhere someone is watching over them. I am that someone. I am the keeper of the light, and I will keep it burning, now and forever, until the stars themselves go dark. This is my story. This is my truth. This is my gift to whoever finds these words. May the light guide you home. Edward Ashworth, Morrow Point Lighthouse, June 1st, 1892.